going to cover my #1 tip on back bending technique that is going to change your back bends forever. Let's get to it. The #1 tip I have for you is to pull your ribs away from your hips before you initiate into the bend and continue to think about it all the way through the bend. If you allow the ribs to pull down and not thinking about creating more space here between ribs and hips, then all of a sudden that back bend is going to end up right in the low spine, and over time that low spine is going to get angrier and angrier with you for abusing it in that way. When you are doing a backward bend in your yoga class, you want to make sure that you're using the entire spine to help you facilitate the bend. So let's get to it. I'm going to do this kind of in a camel position. And, well, not kind of in a camel position. I guess we are in a camel position. So we're in this kneeling position, and I have my knees and my feet hip width distance. First of all, when you come into a beginning back bender practice, most of the time instructors are going to have you bring your hands over your head so that you can feel this stretch up before you go back. The problem with this is they don't tell you to pull your ribs away from your hips. They just say stretch up, in the hopes that your ribs will pull away from your hips when you stretch up. But when you're first starting, you stretch up, and that's good. You know, you just move your arms up and pull the shoulders closer to your ears, and you stretched up. You did it. But instead, the focus is to stretch up, to pull the ribs away from the hips. So you see how different that thought is on my body? Instead of being here and just moving the arms into a stretch position, I instead letting that stretch up affect my entire body. This is really going to help me go back into a good backward bend. All right, so we're going to do this in camel. I'm going to have you start with your hands on your ribs. This way you're going to get a lot of feedback about whether the ribs are pulling away from the hips in your back bends. So fingers are forward and thumb is behind, and I'm lower on the ribs so that I'm closer to the bottom ribs, the floating ribs. Take your elbows and pull them to face the wall behind you and look all the way up at the ceiling. Now you never want to be here and drop your head back. You just want to look up at the ceiling, nice and easy. So I could still, have some space at the back of the neck. The back of the head never rests on the shoulders here. All right, so from here, you're going to pull the ribs away from the hips. Already, you should start to feel this big stretch through your abdomen between the ribs and the hips, and then come back all the way. Grab your heels if you have that. Otherwise, bring your hands to your low spine to support yourself. Now from here, I want you just to think about ribs away from the hips. So ribs away from the hips. Can I get more space between the ribs and the hips? Can I get even more space between the ribs and the hips? All right, so as I do that, the back bend, yes, the low spine is bending, definitely, but it's not all in the low spine. So next time you approach your back bends within your practice, I want your mantra to be ribs away from hips, and see how that affects it. This would go for any back bend, your crescent lunges, your standing back bends, your standing bow or dancer poses, your wheels. So think about this as you move through your practice and see if this gives you some help and hopefully helps you to take those back bends to a different level, advancing your practice one thought at a time. Have a great day.